I'm from Barnstable Village.
I'm going to get going.
My hearing is I was right.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the February 10th, 2025 meeting of the Barnstable Planning Board here at Barnstable Town Hall. We are at 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass. In the James H. Crocker Jr. Hearing Room, located here on the second floor, and it is 7 p.m. The meeting notice has been previously filed with the town clerk in accordance with Mass General Law. All application materials may be accessed through the planning board website or by contacting Karen Pina at karen.pina@town.barnstable.ma.us or calling 508-862-4064. Notice of recording: the meeting will be televised live via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream on the Town of Barnstable's website, streaming85.townofbarnstable.us/cablecast public site. And I will now inquire whether anyone else is recording, and if so, if you could make your presence known. Seeing none, I will call the meeting to order and introduce board members and our staff, starting with Michael.
Good evening, Michael Messinas.
Bob.
Good evening, Bob Twist.
Tim.
Good evening, Tim O'Neill.
Jim.
Good evening, Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning.
Kyle.
Kyle Pedicini, Assistant Director.
And Karen.
Karen Pina, Admin Assistant, Planning and Development.
Thank you so much, and my name is Steve Robichaud. General public comment. This is for any public comment not related to an agenda item this evening. If anybody has any, please come forward. Seeing none, we will move to our first item this evening. This is a zoning amendment, ZA number 2025-062, amending the code of the Town of Barnstable, Part 1, General Ordinance, Chapter 240, zoning to establish a cannabis district overlay and expand existing medical marijuana district. This is continued from January 27th, 2025. And the board is in receipt of a staff report dated January 27th, 2025. Jim, do you want to give us any background on this before we hear from the applicant?
So before you this evening is a zoning amendment proposed by a petitioner who has submitted the requisite certified petition signatures to the town clerk for the expansion of the medical marijuana overlay district and to add to the town zoning ordinance registered recreational marijuana to a certain area of the community as shown in the map, on the map in your staff report, and I believe the petitioner is here and can walk you through it.
Excellent, thank you so much. And Jim, before we begin, did you mention that there was a memo from legal?
Legal did not provide a memo, but did respond to the question of the state law for marijuana, and we can get into it at the moment, or we can get into it during Q&A.
Yeah, good idea. Let's have the applicant take over, and then we'll get back to that. So thank you so much. Welcome. Please state your name for the record and take it away.
Hi, I'm Nathan Hirschler. I'm the owner of 296 through 302 Main Street. Good evening, esteemed members of the Planning Board. I stand before you as a representative of the petitioners today for the establishment of the Cannabis Overlay District and the expansion of the Medical Marijuana Overlay District. Our collective goal is to proactively manage integration of marijuana establishments in Barnstable, ensuring that we harness economic opportunities while preserving the character and safety of our community. The cannabis industry in Massachusetts has demonstrated significant economic potential. As of April of 24, marijuana establishments in the state have surpassed $6 billion in gross sales and contributing substantial tax revenue to the Commonwealth. Focusing on our region, Barnstable County has seen a positive impact from regulated cannabis establishments. For instance, the town of Mashpee collected more than $350,000 in fiscal year 23 from one cannabis-related business. Similarly, Provincetown has benefited from local option taxes and host community fees, which are 3% of gross retail by statute. By establishing the Cannabis Overlay District, Barnstable can strategically position itself to benefit from this burgeoning industry. We'd be the only town in Mid-Cape with recreational marijuana permitted. The proposal emphasizes stringent regulatory measures to ensure that marijuana establishments operate responsibly. Some of this is statutorily mandated. Those include buffer zones, rigorous safety protocols, and operational oversight in an ongoing fashion by the the Cannabis Control Commission. The measures are designed to integrate marijuana establishments into our community, thoughtfully minimizing potential adverse effects and preserving the quality of life that we cherish in this town. It's noteworthy that other neighboring towns have successfully implemented similar overlay districts. In November 23, the town of Bourne approved a marijuana overlay district allowing for the controlled establishment of cannabis businesses. By observing and learning from the experience of other communities, Barnstable can adopt best practices, ensuring that our approach is both effective and tailored to our unique needs. So I urge the planning board to consider the proposal favorably, recognizing the comprehensive benefits it offers to our town. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Great, thank you so much, I appreciate that. Can you remind us how many signatures were on the petition?
So we had a little bit of confusion about what the requirements were under the statute. So we were aiming originally for 150. The statutory requirement ended up only being 10. I think we ended up with like in the 20s or 30s. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well more than required.
Great, appreciate that. Let's go to the board for some comments, questions. Also, we'll hear a little bit more from Jim about the legal department and their input. Michael, any questions, comments at this time?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I would like to hear from Jim in terms of legal. Before I said anything else, I'll pass it for now.
Yeah, why don't we do that now? So I remember last time that I mentioned, and I still have concerns relating to federal law and how it might influence this. And I know that I had put that out there at the last meeting. And Jim, I appreciate you reaching out to legal. And if you can share a little bit more.
Yeah, certainly. So our town legal team offered some guidance in terms of answering the question about how the town of Barnstable may adopt, a use that is currently prohibited at the federal level. They do point to the state law that was adopted in 2016, I believe it was, allowing for such a use. And obviously, as the town of Barnstable, we look to our state for guidance to the law. So it is allowed within the state of Massachusetts, and obviously, as you've seen and heard, many communities have adopted this. So that is the short and sweet of it from their stance on it. The law does have certain parameters in which towns can adopt, and it is married to the liquor license that are allowed. So in the town of Barnstable, a maximum of 4 could be allowed of marijuana retailers pursuant to the matching of licenses, or 20% of the number of licenses of retail sale of alcohol, and that's under Mass General Law 94G. So pointed to 94G of our Mass General Laws is how it allows for us to potentially adopt this use here locally.
Understood. Thank you very much. And Jim, can you just review quickly, the paths available to the town for zoning amendments? I know that town council can sponsor a zoning amendment and refer to the planning board. I know, obviously, the planning board itself can refer a zoning proposed amendment, and then obviously a citizen's petition. Are there other ways? What is the most common way that we see in the town? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so you captured most of them. So this falls under Mass General Law 48.5, and so in 48.5 it outlines who can petition for a zoning amendment. In the town of Barnstable, we are a town council form of government, so we don't have open town meeting. So a town council or a city council may petition, planning board, zoning board, 10 or more certified residents, and a landowner affected by zoning may petition as well. So those are those who can bring it forward. The process then goes here, again, in the town of Barnstable, we don't have town meetings, so it would go to our town council, who is representing that form of government that would ultimately adopt the zoning. They would offer a first read, which is what happened here, meaning they've accepted essentially that petition and put it forward to follow Mass General Law 48.5. 48.5 then tells the planning board that you are to offer an advisory report. So the planning board must forward an advisory report with recommendations on the proposed zoning amendment. back to town council within 21 days after the close of the board's hearing. So while you're keeping it open, gaining more information, you can do so as long as is necessary. But once you close that hearing, you have 21 days to offer that report back to the town council. I know the planning board doesn't offer zoning amendment recommendations often, so it's a little bit different than what you may be used to with, say, a regulatory agreement. Regulatory agreement, if you don't recommend, it stops right there. Zoning amendment does not. So it's simply an advisory report back to town council. They may take that into consideration. It would still proceed to town council.
And they would make their own determination. Okay, that's great. And the clock doesn't start ticking until the meeting is closed. It's good to know. Okay. Great, I appreciate that. Bob, any questions, comments at this time?
Excuse me, I don't have any questions, I do have comments.
Okay.
You want me to read them in?
We'll go around and see if we have any more questions for the applicant. If not, I recommend we, see if there's any public comment. Obviously, we don't have anybody here at the moment. If not, we can close the hearing and then deliberate.
Okay.
Tim, you have any questions at the initial comments?
Nothing that wasn't already answered, thank you.
Okay, great. And Michael?
Nothing at this moment, thanks.
Okay. Seeing no members of the public here to speak, I would move to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All those in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. So the public hearing is closed. And Jim, just to remind us all, it is a majority of members present, correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. And obviously, if it's 2-2, then the motion will not move forward. Now we will deliberate and, I just kind of put out kind of where I'm at right now. I mean, for me, a zoning amendment is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And, I would say that there's kind of a high threshold to meet to make, a change like that. This type of amendment, zoning amendment, is pretty major in my mind. It's when you look at the map, there's a lot of areas affected. I think about the geographic areas that are identified here, and to me, they feel like high traffic areas that get a lot of activity and a lot of use, especially in the summertime. I know in my research about these type of locations, especially in the beginning, there is a lot of traffic, with Hyannis and Barnstable being kind of the center of the Cape and a very popular area. I do worry about the impacts of traffic. We've done so many projects here on this board, and traffic has been such a key talking point. I remember the Walgreens and the drive-through and all those conversations, and how particular we were about number of trips and looking at the impact of every single car. So I worry about that. That's definitely something that concerns me. For me to be in favor of something like this, I would want to see a clear community benefit, and really the only benefit that I've kind of seen and heard is additional tax revenue. I don't see the type of kind of public will or support that would hit the threshold for me. So anyways, that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm leaning. Michael, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I also feel the same way, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it amazes me that we have no public appearance for something to this effect. So I also agree with what you say in terms of zoning. At this time, I really I would advise to move this to the town council.
All right, thank you, Michael. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, this petition seeks to create a cannabis overlay district, which would allow for the creation of a number of recreational marijuana sale and distribution outlets. The amount of recreational marijuana outlets, as Jim pointed out, could be no more than 20% of the number of licenses issued within the town for the retail sale of alcohol. Based upon the number of the retail sale of alcohol licenses, that would allow, as Jim again pointed out, 4 recreational marijuana outlets. And of course, if the number of retail alcohol licenses were to increase, depending on the amount of additional licenses, that could potentially increase the number of recreational marijuana outlets. The map and the proposal reflects that it would create an overlay district all along I&O Road, Route 132, from the Airport Circle northwest almost all the way to the intersection of the Mid-Cape Highway and Cape Cod Community College, as well as along Yarmouth Road north of Route 28 and also near Cape Cod Hospital. The proposal also deals with locations for marijuana cultivators, research facilities, and testing laboratories. And Mr. Chair, I've spent over 20 years of my adult life involved in the investigation and prosecution of large, organized, major manufacturers and distributors of narcotics and dangerous drugs. Many of those matters involved manufacturers and distributors of marijuana, in addition to those engaged in the manufacture and distribution of methamphetamine and cocaine. All of the marijuana matters which I investigated or prosecuted involve thousands or tens of thousands of marijuana plants, either grown outdoors or manufactured indoors with climate-controlled hydroponic facilities with grow lights, fertilization, and irrigation systems. I was never involved in an investigation or prosecution of anyone involved in personal consumption of marijuana or distribution of gram amounts or even ounce amounts of marijuana to friends or associates. Only major commercial manufacturing and distribution. Mr. Chair, the marijuana of today is not the marijuana of 1968 or 1969, or even the marijuana of 1988 or 1989. The marijuana of today has very high levels of production per plant and extremely high THC content. I've seen the impact of marijuana manufacturing and distribution on our younger population, primarily, and the devastation and havoc it has wreaked in young people's lives. When I was the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of California, I was one of a small number of United States attorneys from around the country on the Attorney General's Advisory Committee for Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, charged with developing the nationwide strategy for dealing with federal drug enforcement. During the years in which I sat in the Juvenile Delinquency Division of the Superior Court, an extraordinarily high percentage of the young people who came within the jurisdiction of the court were habitual marijuana users. For a period of time, I presided over the drug court sessions of the juvenile court, involving minors over whom the court had exercised jurisdiction, and found that drug abuse, primarily marijuana, was a major factor in their criminal behavior. I had an opportunity to evaluate the experience of those minors who received extensive counseling and support from the court and from support agencies in an attempt to become drug-free. Mr. Chair, the success level was very low. I have met with and had extensive discussions with a large number of families who've had to place their children in residential treatment programs in order to treat the effects of their abuse of marijuana, at tremendous economic cost to those families, as this form of treatment rarely is covered by insurance. I've seen the tremendous environmental damage caused by both outdoor and indoor manufacturing of marijuana. This proposal seeks to place recreational marijuana distributors in the middle of Barnstable's major retail commercial area along I&O Road, including in the area currently occupied by Cape Cod Mall and the old Cape Town Mall across the street, now known as the Landing at Hyannis, and in Southwind Plaza. We're attempting, or at least should be attempting, to draw more upscale merchants to fill vacancies in these commercial properties. And I ask what upscale merchant wants to locate their business next to a recreational marijuana dispensary? Any possible increase in customer traffic drawn to the merchant by the traffic at the adjacent marijuana dispensary may well be offset by a much larger loss of customer traffic from people who do not want to shop next to a marijuana dispensary. There have been innumerable conversations in recent years about retaining Barnstable's historic and cultural nature and heritage. What could be more contrary to the historical and cultural environment which we're seeking to retain than recreational marijuana dispensaries? even if we were to authorize recreational marijuana dispensaries, why would we allow 4 or more of them to be located on or adjacent to one street in town, I&O Road, which already is heavily impacted by traffic congestion? Yarmouth Road, from Route 28 to the Yarmouth Town Line, also is one of the most heavily traffic-impacted streets in the entire town. Adding marijuana dispensaries to I&O Road and/or Yarmouth Road would only exacerbate the existing traffic congestion and also significantly impact the nature of the area. Instead of being known as the location of Cape Cod Mall and Hyannis Landing, it would be known as the marijuana zone and would likely drive away a significant portion of the existing customer base. The town of Barnstable previously voted in an election to not allow recreational marijuana distributors in town. This proposal seeks to overrule the prior vote of the residents of the town of Barnstable. Mr. Chair, this proposal is bad for public health, it's bad urban planning, and it's bad for Barnstable. I vote no.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that, and appreciate your insight into this. I know you've got a lot of experience with it, and really appreciate your comments. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have a slightly different opinion as my fellow board members from the start of this, and just that, I found the regulation to be at least very well-written and a clear piece of, pragmatic working document regulation as a zoning amendment for this matter. And I don't know if it was started life from another town or other towns' regulation, and this was used in its crafting. So, seeing that in context with my thought of the planning board is not necessarily the sole board in town on morals or kind of town-wide issues. I kind of view the planning board as a pragmatic tool in making sure that, regulation is crafted and kind of put to, once a town-wide issue like this. That being said, the place that I think gave me the pause for this was the actual locations within town and the amount in the different areas, and kind of, I'm looking at the maps that were attached to the staff report for the proposed zoning districts. And I thought the areas, to Bob's point, were areas that in town are, kind of slighted for a different type of redevelopment. And I don't think that this would be, kind of beneficial to other efforts in town and other priorities that the town of Barnstable is trying to achieve. Overall, I do not see, kind of with those in mind, the net positive for the town of Barnstable in regards to this matter or the people. So I would like to vote or I would, when it's time for a vote, I think I'm going to be voting to not recommend it when this goes up to town council.
Understood. Okay. Appreciate that. Anything else to add before we look for a vote on this? Michael, you all set?
I'm all set.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. I move that this board does not recommend zoning amendment town council item number 2025-062 as presented to town council. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor? Michael?
But before we proceed.
Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I just want to make sure we're all sure on what we're doing. Because you phrased it as to not recommend. Yeah, a yes vote would be to not recommend.
Correct, yes, a yes
Yes.
vote is to not recommend.
Yes,
Thank you for that,
yeah,
Bob, yes.
Yeah, and I makes the motion pass that does not recommend it.
Exactly, yep, a yes or an I vote is to not recommend to town council.
No, it's not recommended.
So a yes vote would be to not recommend.
Would it be
All right.
easier just to rephrase it as a positive motion?
Sure, yeah, let's do that.
Do we have to,
That sounds good.
do we have to do anything special to cancel the motion on the floor?
So moved.
So moved, there we go.
All right, and then do I take a vote on that?
Well, there's the motions out there, it was second, so we have to deal with it. So I move why don't we do this? I move to amend your motion.
Okay, go ahead.
To say,
Poor Karen.
I move to recommend zoning amendment TC item 2025-62 to town council.
As presented. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a second? I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay. So all those in favor, Michael?
This is a motion to amend, not a motion on the vote.
If you're
correct?
not in favor, it would be a no vote.
No.
Bob?
Right. I vote to not recommend.
Okay. Tim?
Are we voting on the amendment, or are we voting on the motion?
Jim, go ahead.
All right. So.
Can we, like, rewind here a
Yeah,
couple?
we had a
Yeah.
first and a second on a motion to not recommend the zoning amendment. I believe Bob is offering to offer an amendment to that. So if you'd like to offer that amendment to, I believe you said I move to recommend zoning amendment TC number 25062 as presented to town council. Then we had a second on that amendment. And so now we're going to vote on that amendment. So we're accepting that amendment. So if you agree that that's going to be the motion now, you would say yes, and then you would take a vote on the actual motion itself.
Understood.
So
a
right
yes.
now on the
Yeah.
floor is, do you agree to amend the motion to, I move to recommend zoning amendment TC item 25062 as presented to town council?
Understood. So a yes vote accepts the amendment.
Yes.
All right.
And then you'll vote.
Michael, how vote you?
Yes.
Okay. Bob?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And Steve Robichaud votes yes. The amendment is accepted, and we will now take a vote on the motion to recommend zoning amendment, town council numbers 2025-062. So a yes vote would be to recommend. A no vote would be to not recommend. Michael?
No.
Bob?
No.
Tim?
No.
And Steve Robichaud votes no. Unfortunately, the motion does not pass, so.
So just to clarify.
Thank you.
This goes up to council regardless, correct?
Correct.
It does,
So
yes, sir,
yeah.
yes.
An advisory report will be written, codified, or stating such, and it will go to town council, and we'll work with you on setting up a public hearing time for that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that. Moving along, we have general correspondence, Chapter 91 notice for 60 Bay Shore Road, Steinkraus to maintain pier and floats. Jim, a staff update?
Yes, so the planning department has been extremely busy. We've recently presented to town council on a flow neutral policy presentation to see if town council would consider adopting a flow neutral policy. They recommended staff begin to develop out that policy, and we have a draft policy that we've been working on and hopeful to get it before the council here in the next meeting or two. It's a really interesting next step that could potentially save significant funds when developing out infrastructure for our comprehensive wastewater management plan. And so we're working through the nuances of that now.
Would you mind just, I guess, what is a flow neutral?
Sure.
Yeah.
I was hoping we didn't have to get into it. No.
I mean, if you could summarize in a few sentences.
So ultimately, what a flow neutral policy, it's a land use control policy, and so that land use control policy is identified through Mass DEP, and they started this fund essentially. It's a state fund that will help give you low interest loans for sewer projects or stormwater projects that help remove
Nitrogen.
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously we have a 30-year comprehensive wastewater management plan, and so any cost savings through low interest loans is something we at least need to investigate. And so looking into the nuances of the regulations with Mass DEP. And looking at some similar policies, so you'll see, I believe there's 6 other towns here on the Cape that actually have a flow neutral policy. And it really, what the policy does is point back to our approved comprehensive wastewater management plan. It says we're not going to exceed the ultimate build-out that is defined in the comprehensive wastewater management plan. And that's ultimately what that flow neutral means is, you know, we have planned out over 30 years a full build-out, understanding what zoning will allow, understanding what the infrastructure would then allow. And with that, we have a planned total build-out. And this policy essentially says we're not going to exceed that full build-out. And if we were, we would have to amend our comprehensive wastewater management plan, which would have to go through the state's review again. And with that, that's the last box checked in order to get low-interest loans to almost no-interest loans. We have actually, it's a 0.03% loan because it's 30 years. If we were to shrink that to 20 years, I believe we can get a 0%. But our very qualified CFO believes that the 30 years is the right match for us at this time. So we're currently investigating that, drafting a policy, hopefully to put before town council. I presented before council last Thursday night, so there's a presentation there if you want to get the full snapshot.
Great, thank you.
Yep. At the same time, we're working with the county to develop out a regional housing services office. So I've talked about this a few times, I know, before the board. But the pilot program is about to end, and we're working with the county to understand what the best next steps are, and potentially have the town of Barnstable as kind of the lead community. Really what this will do, hopefully for us, if we can all move in together on this, is regionalize some of these administrative burdens that the state has kind of handed to each community in terms of monitoring affordable units, lotteries, marketing, all those types of things that each community is responsible for, and hopefully we can do that in a regional effort that can be much more cost-effective and efficient. In addition, we have the local comprehensive planning committee coming up on Thursday. We've been actively working through the first draft that's before the committee right now. Thursday, we're going to start working through redlined comments that we received from the committee, likely at least one more meeting of that action, and then out to the public for review of that first draft. And hopefully we'll get a lot of good comments there. Lastly, working with our town council's ad hoc committees, most recently before the zoning ad hoc committee. I think I mentioned it at our last meeting. We've met again. We're meeting again, I think, tomorrow evening to discuss potential changes to the downtown Hyannis zoning. They're looking at solar, potential short-term rentals, inclusionary housing, and maybe others. I think that's about it. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. Great. Appreciate the update. Any questions, comments from members? Okay.
None.
All set? All right. Let's see, approval of minutes. Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the January 27th, 2025 draft minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the January 27, 2025 draft minutes.
Thank you, Tim, in a second.
Second it.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, says aye. Minutes are approved. Future meetings, February 24th and March 10th, 2025, here at 7 p.m. in person. And any future additional comments, questions, concerns before we adjourn? Okay, I move to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you, Bob. All those in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. All set.